From Disney Animation and the groundbreaking storytellers of Kugali.
Happy birthday, Tola.
We all know that when something comes out of Disney, it's usually going to be a dumpster fire or the equivalent of a very bad trip. Every single time Disney or Marvel pops up, can't help but experience a spontaneous urge to retch. If not for their horribly written and poorly executed stories, it's their recent ultra-activism stance and perpetual crusade of claiming inclusivity while their actions scream the exact opposite. So when Disney dropped another little gem in the form of a trailer or show, my expectations were already in the basement. I must admit, after subjecting myself to the Iwaju trailer, I was left somewhat intrigued.
From Disney Animation and the groundbreaking storytellers of Kugali.
Happy birthday, Tola. This is Oti. You want stars for a pet?
While I'm waiting for your fucking response, are you just not gonna say anything, dumbass?
So from what I gather, the little girl's father brings her home a lizard, which I will unabashedly admit is the only reason I want to see this. The synopsis for the show is as follows. Iwaju is an original animated series set in a futuristic Lagos, Nigeria. Sorry, Legos, that's how they pronounce it for some reason. The exciting coming-of-age story follows Tola, a young girl from a wealthy island, and her best friend Cole, a self-taught tech expert, as they discover the secrets and dangers hidden in their different worlds. Sounds interesting, right? Except it is, but not really. There are a few things that I'll mention based on what Disney gets right in wanting a show like this and possible reasons why people are not interested. Let's start with the premise. The premise of a little girl going on an adventure with her friend, with her lizard sidekick, doesn't seem so bad, except it comes off very generic. Like I said, the only reason why I want to watch this is because of the lizard. And right at the end of the trailer, it looks as though he's morphing into something completely badass, like some monster hunter dragon.
Go!
To me, the main character seems to be him. He's got that main character energy, while the little girl doesn't really seem to stand out as one. I mean, if we're looking at just the human aspect of it, her friend seems to be more of a main character than she is. I'm gonna be honest, this feels more like a PBS or Saturday morning show that you put on for your babies. Not something that the general audience would even be remotely interested in paying for to see. And before you come at me and say, well, what if it's not for the general audience, what if it's for babies? Well, the thing is, with Disney's ancient track record that seems to be obsolete by now, you'd anticipate that anything they produce, even if targeted at children, would have a universal appeal. Something that the entire family can watch and enjoy. That's the vibe I've always received from their classic animated films, and even from their older movies. It's supposed to be something that can bring families together, and it has to have this unique concept and interesting story. And while this concept is sweet and it does have an element of uniqueness to it, it feels more of the same old, same old. As for the designs, the characters are cute in a weird Fortnite Overwatch type of way, but by now they come off as the epitome of generic with the style, and there's nothing that really stands out about them. The lizard's design is very cool, and like I said, given its prominence in this trailer, it hints that the narrative might predominantly revolve around this specific character, or at least offer his perspective. Personally, the main character doesn't pique my interest, but I'm in all the way for some quality lizard screen time. That's just me being biased because I love dragons and lizards and stuff. I'm aware that deploying adorably vibrant characters is a classic marketing tactic to reel in the audience, yet, even though successful for me personally, that's only part of the battle. Engaging an audience is one thing. The storyline must then do the heavy lifting to maintain their interest so they don't click off. Now, the story. The only thing I got off the story from the trailer is futuristic Nigeria. Okay, we've done this with the whole Dragon's 9 Realms thing. Girl going on adventures with her friend, and cute lizard sidekick thing that might be something else in disguise. The setting is in Nigeria, which is actually really interesting for Disney and Pixar to do. I've done a video before on the shade that Disney seems to throw at black people or dark-skinned people on average when it comes to animated movies and shows. It doesn't look as though the main character is being changed into a creature, which usually seems to be the track record of these studios, even though it looks like the creature itself is the main character, but yay for progress, I think. One thing I'll give it is that at least the story seems original for Disney. I know nobody wants to say it, but I don't know why modern studios feel the need to diminish other ethnicities under the guise of promoting diversity. Now here's the thing, this show as it stands alone, not very diverse at all, which makes sense. Mulan wasn't, Brave wasn't, Moana wasn't. However, the general aspect of storytelling as a whole from Disney or these animated studios can be diverse by telling stories from different cultures and ethnicities. That said, it seems the controversy stems from the desire to represent stories from diverse ethnic backgrounds, which are largely uniform in their cultural depiction, but there's a perceived trend trend where these studios feel the need to hijack the traditional stories of those of the Caucasian persuasion characters with characters of varied ethnicity.
Ariel is in black. Ariel is in black. Ariel is in black. Ariel is in black. She gonna be black today. 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 Yeah. Girl, get your girl. Who the fuck is you? Oh my mama, you dirty as fuck.
Why is it not?
You can't be that girl.
Why is it not the real one?
Dishonor.
It's not because like Ariel's white, not brown.
Hey. I have the perfect idea. Okay, talk to me. Let's make the Little Mermaid black. Oh my God. Why didn't we think of this sooner? Yes, but wait. Let's not just stop there. Let's make live action Snow White black. We'll call her Black Ice. That could work. And Sleeping Beauty can be a Mexican. She'll be sleeping through her deportation. That could use a little work. And Peter Pan should be gay and Asian. Really? No, you dumb fuck.
Why is there a push to reinterpret historical narratives set in places like Sweden or Greece or Norway with a significant number of the main characters being of African descent? It's entirely acceptable to have stories focused on a single ethnic group, like this show, regardless of whether or not they're light-skinned or dark-skinned. However, when there's a cultural narrative suggesting that lighter-skinned individuals are bigoted for expressing concerns about their historical stories and lore being adapted to include people of different ethnic backgrounds, while simultaneously facing barriers to being included themselves in the stories and lore of those very groups, it's bound to create a divisive atmosphere.
Let me get this straight. The generations that grew up with Sidney Poitier, Bill Cosby, Morgan Freeman, Danny Glover, Whoopi Goldberg, Eddie Murphy, Denzel Washington, Wesley Snipes, Samuel L. Jackson, and Will Smith all of a sudden just decided they could no longer stand to see black or brown people take center stage in film and television. And at the exact moment this happened, every major media corporation simultaneously came to the same conclusion that the only remedy for this newfound bigotry was to race swap popular existing white characters instead of doing what they've just been doing for 50 years, which was creating popular original black characters. That's the story we're going with?
This approach has successfully alienated many and fostered resentment towards people of darker complexions, achieving the exact opposite of the intended goal of fostering inclusivity and understanding. That's probably part of the reason why the dislike ratio was so very high on this trailer, even though it should not have been. From what I've seen, there's nothing wrong with the trailer. I'm definitely not going to pay for this, you know, because of Disney's track record, but I will watch it via somebody else and give it a chance. But it's not something that's drawing me in, and if it weren't for the lizard being in it, I wouldn't be interested. Africa, with its vast array of countries, including Nigeria, is rich in myths, lore, and historical narratives. It would be nice to see content that explores beyond the typical futuristic tech and AI this and that. This is a step in the right direction though, no doubt. But as people are saying, it just feels like another rendition of Wakanda. You can still have really great characters and tell stories similar to that of Moana, where you have deities and gods personified. We have Hercules, mermaids, Peter Pan, the Brothers Grimm, Hawaiian culture, Chinese culture and history, and even that of the Irish. And it's a bit disheartening that dark-skinned people, especially if you're catering towards the ones in America from African descent, don't know their history because they were cut off from their ancestors. Now, understandably, these specific Africans or African ancestors were cut off from their own people long before they made it to America, since they were captured by other African tribes and sold to the people who came from across the sea. But it would have been easier for them to connect to their cultures and gods and lore still living in the general region. I mean, it's still bad because they're still captive, but you get my general drift. Imagine being brought to a land where nobody looks like you and they worship a complete different god. The culture is completely different. After many generations of not being able to read and barely having the time and the freedom to do anything, you're gonna lose that culture and that history. You lose your identity, which was the whole point, because when people own people, they don't want them to have a sense of self, because I guess it makes them feel, oh, so horrible to be reminded that these are actual human beings that they're owning. Given America's self-proclaimed commitment to inclusivity and valuing diverse backgrounds, you'd think that there'd be more of a concerted effort to help African Americans reconnect with their ancestral history through film, films and shows centered around specific myths and legends. In my homeland, we were immersed in tales from our own culture right from the start. Not just fantasies from distant lands. Even though those cultures were shared with us as well, we grew up with own sense of self-identity and our cultural background and stories from our background. However, my observations since arriving in the US suggest that for Black Americans, there seems to be a historical narrative focused solely on the oppression their forebears endured with little beyond that. The internet is bursting at the seams with stories from African nations, ripe for exploration. And these stories don't just have to be limited to historical figures. They could delve into the rich tapestry of myths as well. Numerous tales exist celebrating the affluence, triumphs, and rich histories of African characters and their real-life figures, which is drastically different from the cultural background portrayal of African Americans whose only historical context and legacy is, look, Black people, you were victims and that's your only history. See, the white people owned you and you were victims and you will always be under the feet of them and it will always be that way forever and ever, amen. Be angry and upset all the time and never rise to your full destiny and purpose. Interesting that that's what they choose to focus on. And they can reconnect with these stories and showcase the lore and the beauty of these different cultures in Africa. Yet what seems to be the trend? Casting people of African descent in futuristic tech settings. Now, while nothing is inherently wrong with that, and there's probably way more to the story, I would hope, than just that, but because it's so similar and closer to the world we live in, there's no escapism and there's nothing new. Every sci-fi movie and show seems fixated on the future, but at least it's taking place in a different world or planet, so we still get some element of different creatures that live there. But when you have regular dramatic shows with regular humans on Earth endlessly riffing on AI, robots, and technology, the redundancy leaves little room for true escapism or fresh insights to glean. I feel like it's a very lazy avenue to take when writing a story about a culture that is rich with lore and background. And I'm not trying to bash the creator of the show because it's probably the story that they wanted to tell. If they're Nigerian, then this is nothing for them because they've already grown up with that culture, and that's fine. But I can guarantee that the people who created this also did so in mind to reach the American audience and not just Black Americans. And so saying, what is there new about the story that can draw Americans in general into wanting to watch it? You have the same situation with Dragon 9 Realms, and for me personally, that show sucks chameleon balls. I've done reviews and reactions to it, so you guys can check that out and listen to me get viscerally angry as time progresses. Compared to the original movies that were set in a more historical fantasy context, the newer futuristic types where you could just use AI technology as a significant convenient plot point makes the show come off as boring and contrived as hell. There's nothing enchanting about it anymore, and the only thing that remotely it has going for it is the addition of the dragons, which also suck. It's uninspiring and more of the same old, same old. Iwaju looks like a more polished version of that. The show does have allure, and I definitely want to watch it because in some way it's unique, cute, and lighthearted. It's definitely a step in the right direction, especially if you consider how Disney has been treating Black people. I hope it isn't like the Wakanda portrayal, because even though that was a very interesting concept, they could not leave well enough alone and needed to have one or two characters make a racist and bigoted remark about a white person.
Don't scare me like that, colonizer.
Well, my name is Everett.
Yes, I know.
Wow.
A colonizer in chains. Now I have seen everything.
Shut the fuck up with that shit.
People are very tired of that. And so when they see anything that is remotely diverse with the inclusion of a dark-skinned person, and they automatically get defensive and think that the show is going to be about that, and that is the studio's fault, that's where that's coming from. I'm not saying that Disney is the only one to blame, but they're one of the biggest. And then if you say anything about it, you're called a bigot. And it's a shame that people automatically now see a dark-skinned person on screen, and it automatically defaults to the perception that it's gonna be about stepping on white people or saying something derogatory about people with a lighter skin shade. That should not be the knee-jerk reaction. And it never used to be like that until companies in the media started provoking people. Like, I've recently gone back and started watching movies from the 80s, 70s, 60s. And when they had dark-skinned people or other ethnicities aside from white people in them, I'm talking about American movies, there was nothing about you're Black and I'm white and you're Black and you're white. Like, it was just, you're just a character that exists. This other person, they're best friends, like Predator. I also did a review on that. You can watch several of those videos. I did reviews on them. And not once does race ever come up, like ethnicity ever come up. And it's so refreshing. The characters are just characters. It's a man that just happens to be Black American. It's a woman that just happens to be Mexican. It's not about, oh my God, colonist. Oh my God, I'm black and I'm a victim. Like, it's none of that. And I don't know why, where it became such this weird desire to just victimize people all the time. People, turns out, don't like watching that because that's not how things exist in the real world with normal, functioning, mature people. You don't get people to accept different ethnic backgrounds by telling those people you want to accept them that they're evil for just existing in a skin they can't change, by judging them based on the few of their ancestors that were pieces of garbage. I've said it before and I'll say it again. That kind of behavior incites bigotry and creates prejudice. It's a very human reaction, and it's no different than a teacher paying special attention to the student in the front. And I know because I was that student that got that treatment, where the teacher would be like, see Amanda over here? She does her homework. Unlike all of you people, she's actually serious about being here. You need to be more like Amanda. Why can't you do this like Amanda? See Amanda? She always is prepared. You keep asking for a pencil. Amanda has all her pencils. Or a big sibling being blamed for everything that happens while the little sibling is treated like an angel despite its behavior and is able to get away with things that the bigger sibling would never. And I've seen that happen in my family as well. It does breed resentment and hatred and almost comes across as an instigation for people to fight each other, all while the person instigating is pretending that they're the good guy who cares about them. A lot of us see right through it, and that's not an excuse for people to act that way or act bigoted, but you can kind of understand where it comes from and why it happens. It happens on both sides too. If the media is telling you that you're a victim and that these people over here hate you because of your skin color, of course you're gonna naturally feel, especially if you're not inclined to do research on your own, that you're a victim, and you should feel fear and hatred towards these people and hurt them, and all their ignorant misgivings are gonna be proved right when you act that way, because the instigator set the both of you up against each other. And if you're on the other side of the equation and you're being told by the media that you can't speak or exist because you were just born prejudiced based on your skin color, that you have special privilege because of it, and these people over here need to get everything handed out to them specifically for their skin color, you're gonna start feeling resentment towards those people. So I think that's part of the reason why you see the comments that you see under this video and the dislike ratio. Now, if the show comes out and it's still a banger, I think people's hearts will change. There's a familiar pattern where audiences, wary from being misled or disappointed, initially greet new releases with skepticism. Yet when shows or movies like House of the Dragons or Across the Spider-Verse prove themselves with compelling narratives and characters, the public swiftly shifts to enthusiasm, and they're actually eager to support and embrace these characters because it's actual good storytelling and story writing and character building and world building. Funny how that happens when people can feel the passion in something. At this juncture, Disney needs to provide content that not only matches but surpasses its former glory. Merely just churning out content for the sake of doing that is not working. At this point, they've successfully capsized their own boat by ruining their brand and reputation, and they're going to actually need to exercise some great effort to rebuild that and the trust with their audience. That's even mildly in their interest to do, which it doesn't seem to be the case. So don't blame the audience for being skeptics. What Disney and other studios like this should do is release the show like this with a Nigerian background or an Ethiopian background, and then release one on the Scottish background. Then they should do one with the Japanese, and then do one with the Netherlands, and so on and so forth, and keep it culturally correct. There's nothing wrong with there being a homogenous cast and a story set in a homogenous culture. I mean, the hypocrisy is something that people also pick up on very easily. If this was a futuristic Sweden and they made a show about it, you would see a bunch of black people and Asian people in it. Like a hefty amount, more than what the statistic actually is. However, notice this is a futuristic Nigeria and there is not one white person. And the thing is, if this was futuristic and it was a wealthy area, people from all over the world would want to be there, like what happened with America where everybody was trying to come here, but not one white person. And by the way, other ethnic groups live in Nigeria and were born there as well that are considered ethnic minorities. But that's the point I'm trying to make. All in all, I think the trailer is very cute, and I think the lizard was a very good marketing draw, and I will be watching it, or at least giving it a chance for that reason. Hopefully they can make it about the characters just being characters and not about them being a certain skin color. No other story from any other ethnic background does that. Indian, Korean, Chinese, Japanese, Mexican, nobody else mentions the color of their skin. But for whatever reason, whenever they portray black people, it always has to be about their blackness or what they look like. If we want people to stop looking at people through that lens, then stop always drawing attention to it. And I know it seems funny and ironic because I'm talking about it and seemingly drawing attention to it, but the reason why I even have to bring it up or discuss it is because it's such a wide issue that many studios are doing. We don't need Samuel Jackson telling other characters, "Black girl magic." This shit is weird, bro. That's why there are a lot of women out there acting out of pocket and like their shit don't stink. You're a woman, period. There's nothing magic about one ethnicity or another. Let people with dark skin just exist. And stop treating people with darker skin like they're mentally disabled 3-year-olds that need to be hyped up because you know society is going to see them on a lower level due to their handicap or something. It's very dehumanizing. And the thing is, people don't even catch how dehumanizing and insulting it is. They don't realize that they're the butt of the joke. That's what's messed up. Like someone who's smiling in your face like, oh, really? Oh, that's so horrible that happened to you. We got you, bro. But in the meantime, they're laughing at you with their friends. That's what these studios are doing to Black people. Hopefully the show doesn't fall into the same pit that the other movies and shows have done, but this would be a step in the right direction if they just let the story be a story. That's why people loved Into the Spider-Verse, because they just let it be. Even if they added the one little subtle message in there or two, it makes sense for them going to school and being surrounded by that, but the story wasn't about that. You could walk away from that and miss it with one blink because it wasn't focused on that. And it was a good story because they had good characters and it had nothing to do with, man, I'm magic, I'm black. Like, no, nobody of any skin color should just be magic by default because of their skin color. That's just weird. Anyway, I hope you guys got what I was trying to say. I just want things to go back to the way our parents and grandparents had it when they had media that actually told good stories with good characters and actually committed themselves to the art and put their whole heart and effort and ability into making things that you can watch now and it feel timeless and it feel as though it's still relevant today despite being from a different time. If you guys want to get an idea of what I'm talking about, you can check out my low budget or monster movie playlist where I go over a lot of these movies. A lot of them are really bad. But one thing I will give them, despite how nauseating they are, is that they focus on the story and not what the people look like in terms of their ethnic background. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You've asked, we answer.